Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lawcast. This time we're going back to cover one of the great moments in WCW history and a fitting conclusion to our Starrcade anthology. It's Starrcade 1993, and it's one of the last great moments of Ric Flair's career, which is a little crazy to say considering he wrestled another 17 years after this, but this would have been one great note to go out on if this had been it.
Most wrestlers don't even get one beautiful goodbye. They basically fade off into irrelevance, or they get hurt and just disappear, or they're at a flea market wrestling against some version of Doink the Clown 20 years after you thought they were already dead. Ric Flair gets two beautiful goodbyes, probably more than the man deserves.
This was an eventful year, 1993, for WCW.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, to start with, Ric Flair is back with the company. We'll get into that. He wasn't there this time last year. There's a new man at the top as Bill Watts was fired in early 1993. Shortly before he was fired, he was demoted based on the fact that the company was underperforming all available business metrics. They reorganized the structure of the company to have three department heads. Sharon Sadello was going to be in charge of pay-per-view, Eric Bischoff was going to be in charge of TV, and Watts was going to run the wrestling division. Jim Ross is out after this. I mean, he was with Watts, but also they'd had a falling out. So JR is in the worst of both worlds, where he's both not on Watts' good side, but still perceived by everybody to be Watts' boy.
And also, a guy who was literally under his jurisdiction in Bischoff has now been promoted way above him, which is a huge slap in the face.
Yeah, that they put Bischoff in that role instead of JR was writing on the wall. JR ends up jumping to the WWF, which ends up being a checkered initial run because he gets let go after about a year, but different story for a different time there.
Yeah, so Bischoff actually gets his role, which that's such a confusing way to break up business. It would make sense more, I guess, if pay-per-view and TV were all that different. But essentially, all three of these people are running the same department with a lot of spillover between them. So naturally, this isn't going to work.
No, this is a terrible way to set it. Somebody's got to be in charge.
Yes, somebody's got to say yes or no. Somebody has to.
I mean, the problem with the previous structures was not that someone was in charge. The problem was that the someones were Jim Herd and Bill Watts.
Yes. The problem was that an idiot was in charge and saying idiotic things, yes or no. Though, what eventually comes of all this is that the right person winds up with all the power eventually.
It's not the person anyone would have expected.
No, the last person who should have gotten it based on any sort of prior experience or anything like that winds up being the right one. But the reason he gets it, because the narrative is sort of that he just kind of gets handed the keys to this ridiculous car. What actually happens is that he gets the lowest ranking membership in the leadership, and then everybody above him just flames out spectacularly.
But it's just, people need to understand, when Bischoff takes over, this company is a disaster.
Huge disaster. Everyone before him has tanked it, one by one, all in a myriad of beautiful and chaotic ways.
And we'll get into the debacle of Watts' departure in a second, but that really should have been the death blow for WCW.
The only reason this company still exists is because Ted Turner does not actually know what's going on in WCW. I would guarantee you that he has not watched a moment of the program nor spared it a thought. The fact is that their losses are just a drop in the bucket to him. So he's just nah, fuck it, keep him around. It means nothing to him except that they were big for him at one point. So he's I really just don't want to get rid of him. They're like an old tchotchke on his shelf.
He gets to mess with Vince McMahon, who he doesn't like. Yeah, it works out.
He's so unfathomably rich and powerful that losing $1 million a year just to have a thing that he likes to have is totally reasonable.
WCW was a helpful money pit for Turner because they could put accounting losses into WCW to reduce their tax liability. this is part of the reason to be suspicious. When you see these numbers that like WCW lost 80 or $100 million in a year,
No.
a lot of that's on paper. Yeah, like a lot of that is just like they're added losses there to reduce their tax liability other places. Like some suspicious accounting going on here in a company as large as the Turner organization.
It's also basically just a developmental feeder promotion for like the Atlanta Braves and
Yeah,
Falcons and all of that stuff.
the
Like,
people who do their TV. Yeah.
yeah. So like go down there, learn how to do camera work for a sporting television broadcast, go down there and learn how to do like a touring sporting thing and like book venues and hotels for the guys, and like all of that stuff is stuff that they do in the major sports promotions too. So they would just put people down there, which the wrestlers always complain about because they'd be like, every week we get somebody new, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Then as soon as they get good, they take them for the Braves.
Okay. Are you ready for how many people were on this booking committee that they put together?
Okay, Jesus Christ. Yes.
Bill Watts, Dusty
Uh-huh.
Rhodes, Greg Gagne, Bill Dundee, Jim Barnett, Keith Mitchell, Ole Anderson, Jim Ross, Larry Zbyszko, Sharon Sidello, Mike Graham, Bischoff, and Michael Hayes.
Are you out of your... What the fuck?
It's
what?
about to get even better. Reportedly, Flair was told he could join the committee if he came back to WCW, and Sid was told he could join the committee. Sid!
We're going to give Sid the pencil and let him book?
The thought of Sid in booking meetings is that like just Sid putting on like his reading glasses and getting out his booking sheets.
He's just sitting in between two skinny accountant people, just bursting out of his suit jacket.
Just Sid being like, what about this opening match for Saturday night?
You know the funny thing about that is that by all accounts, Sid had a ton of really good booking ideas. He brought in Booker T and Stevie Ray. He created Harlem Heat. He like, if you ever listen to a shoot interview, he basically spends half an hour playing So You Think You Can Book WCW, and it's pretty good.
Nobody could get past the ridiculousness of the idea of Sid booking, though.
That's out fucking great. Also, there are fucking 40 people on this committee.
Like, how? These people couldn't even decide where to go for lunch, like, with that many people involved.
Also,
the nightmare of trying to do anything on a committee that size.
The outrageous egos in this room. They've basically taken the head booker of every territory of the last 20 years and like put him in one room and said, all right, now book Saturday night. Tell me what we're going to do with Lord Steven Regal.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine Dusty Rhodes and Ole Anderson agreeing on any topic?
No.
On anything?
And then you're going to throw in Bill Watts, Jim Ross, Jim Barnett, Michael Hayes, Zbyszko?
This is insane.
Yeah.
Especially like, Zbyszko's an active wrestler. Like, he's just going to be like, yeah, put me in a match with Flair. This is wild. This makes no sense.
Even just finding a room big enough for all these people to meet in seems like it would be a challenge.
And, like, I wonder if this was something that came down from, like, the higher-up Turner brass. Like, this is what we do in our meetings. We have 45 vice presidents meet up together. But, like, you got to put together a show, man.
Yeah. Like, what? Are you going to vote on everything? Majority vote carries it? Like, more than about 3 people booking. I mean, and as much as we're making fun of this is what WWE is like.
Yeah, it is.
I mean,
and this is why the shows are what they are.
Yeah, I mean, the writers there are, stooge wheels in the machine, but still, they've got a giant room of people pitching ideas.
At least in that case, there's somebody definitively in charge at the end of the day. Like, you just basically have 40 people, like, feeding crappy ideas, and Vince being like, I like those 7, do that. Yeah. Here, that's not even that. It's literally, there's no Vince. It's just everyone writes all their shit on the whiteboard, and you're like, well, okay, we voted on all of this stuff, so it turns out that Brad Armstrong's winning the world title. That's all we could agree on.
This would explain why nothing in WCW ever made any damn sense.
It really would. But at least, and I'm going to give them this, is that this is not a bad card. and at least things seem weirdly stable now. And what I'm going to guess that is because no one has enough power to just jerk it wildly in one direction or another for a change. So it just kind of steadily progresses.
And then Watts was fired, and this is a rather strange story. I think people know the broad strokes of this, but there's some very specific details that I find very entertaining. To start with, it's all Marge Schott's fault.
Yeah. Wait, who's Marge Schott?
Yeah. Does anybody remember Marge Schott? This is a throwback.
She's primarily a topic for our other podcast, 90s sports podcast. But in this case, who is Marge Schott?
She was the owner of the Cincinnati Reds, who became embroiled in a series of controversies over her racist statements and behavior in the 90s. The one of relevance here is when it was revealed in November of 1992 in a deposition that she referred to Reds players as her $1 million N-words.
Yep. She was a real racist old lady. Oh boy, she was.
She'd also said Adolf Hitler did good things in Germany. She owned a Nazi paraphernalia, made some very anti-Semitic remarks about sneaky Jews or something like that. Just an all-around bad person.
Just the kind of person who only could possibly get into power by nepotism and getting handed it by their family. That's still going on to this day with ownership, but okay.
So coming out of this, she is banned for a year by Major League Baseball. Hank Aaron, the Braves legend, Turner Sports executive, who ironically was on Starrcade last year right in the midst of this, in the ring with Bill Watts, which I cracked up when I saw it.
Yep.
Hank Aaron was very critical of Major League Baseball for what he said was a very weak, response to this. He felt she should have been forced to sell the team the way Donald Sterling later would be by the NBA when he became embroiled in a similar controversy.
Absolutely. He was absolutely right. And Hank Aaron had always been known to be extremely outspoken about racial matters in baseball. He was kind of like the racial ambassador from Turner to baseball.
Yeah. So Mark Madden, yes, that Mark Madden,
noted nemesis of the Lawcast, Mark Madden,
decides he's going to stir up some trouble as he notices the irony of Turner employing Bill Watts, who has made his share of racist remarks in his day. Mark Madden digs up a 1991 interview that Watts did with Wade Keller for the Pro Wrestling Torch and sends it to Hank Aaron, asking for his comment for a story he's going to write. And if it was Phil Mushnick was on this too. If it wasn't Mark Madden, somebody else was going to write the same story. This was coming. As soon as this Marge Schott thing happened and Hank Aaron spoke out on it, somebody was going to point out how ridiculous it was that Turner was employing Bill Watts.
Yeah, and even though it was an older thing, let's be clear, it's not that he had stopped saying things like this. Bill Watts is one of the more openly racist people in the history of professional wrestling. And in fact, I believe when he is presented with this and asked, hey, these are the things you said, right? He was like, yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah. I don't want to quote this because it's ugly, but broad strokes of it, he praises Lester Maddox, who was a restaurant owner who was a segregationist who closed his restaurant rather than serve black customers. He then got elected governor of Georgia. He beat Jimmy Carter in that election, in fact. Repeatedly uses the word fag, lots of anti-gay slurs in here too, says that the best thing that ever happened to black people was they were brought to America as slaves. Just ugly, backwards, gross shit.
Yeah, if the hairs on the back of your neck are standing up just hearing that stuff, that's not the half of it. Steve made it nice for you. It's bad.
Yeah. Goes off on a tangent about brutes at one point. Yeah. The other incredible thing is I've heard that what Wade Keller didn't publish is even worse.
Yep. Like, this wasn't intended to bury him. This wasn't an expose. This is just an interview, and he just starts talking about this
happened
shit.
in the middle of an interview they were doing about, wrestling and like what Bill Watts was up to.
Yeah, this is just what Bill Watts talked about to people. It is incredible that he managed to have a high-ranking job of any sort with anyone.
So Bill Watts is fired. Good riddance. He had run WCW into the ground.
Can I also ask for your opinion on the rumor that he peed out the window of his office in Turner Towers?
Whether I think it's true? Absolutely. Yes.
I hope that it is. That's my favorite Bill Watts story.
Fully approve of that.
Yeah. Somebody said that, like, how powerful do you think you are? And he responded by pissing out his window into the parking lot. This is how powerful I am.
Turned out he wasn't as powerful as he thought.
Nope.
Other big story, Ric Flair is back. He was let go by the WWF in early 1993. Apparently him and Vince had a handshake deal that Vince would let him go if he ever, dropped him out of the main event. By early 93, Vince is going with a youth movement. Flair is not going to be in the main event. I think Vince may have asked him if he wanted to, like, basically become an agent and a front office guy. And Flair felt like he had years left. Vince just whiffed a lot on guys who he thought were too old in this period, if you think about it, with Flair, Savage, Hogan, Piper. These guys all drew money for years in WCW after Vince thought they were too old.
Yeah, I don't think it was really an age thing with them necessarily so much as a screen time age thing. Yeah. Like, Vince couldn't think of anything left for these guys to do, so they weren't worth anything to him.
And Flair's WWF run hadn't really worked out anyway. I mean, like, I think people really remember it fondly because of the Rumble, because of the great match with Savage at WrestleMania. He wasn't drawing. It was not working.
No. And in one of those moves that makes Vince McMahon such a fascinating and polarizing figure, he's true to his word. He lets him go.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have, but fuck.
Flair puts over Mr. Perfect on his way out of town on the second episode of Monday Night Raw. Great match. Definitely worth checking out if you've never seen it.
Hell yeah. It's so good that I wonder if Vince was having second thoughts, like, well, shit.
I mean, if they had him, I mean, that's the thing, is it's kind of crazy that to let him walk as they're launching this new, like, live Monday Night Raw where he's going to have more opportunity to do longer matches seems like a mistake.
Yep, sure does.
Flair returned to WCW in February. Couldn't wrestle for a few months as part of a non-compete agreement. I mean, for his part, Flair had been thinking about coming back to WCW since they canned Herd. Like, that Herd was his big issue, and especially once they hired Watts, who he was comfortable with, even though Watts is gone by the time he actually comes back. Like, with Herd out of the way, I think his eye was always on getting back to WCW. That was his home.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the place where he belonged, and he ruled that place, and he knew that he could do basically anything he wanted there.
So he spends his first few months hosting a talk show, and then he returns to the ring at Beach Blast in the summer and beats Barry Windham for the NWA title. Flair lost the NWA title to Rick Rude at Fall Brawl. I think by that point, WCW has split with the NWA. Actually, I think it was putting the belt on Rude that caused the split because they didn't get approval from the NWA. And, like, the NWA board just read it in the dirt sheets that Rude was on the Disney tapings with the NWA title. And that was how they found out.
And that is very frustrating, though making the decision to split with WCW will result in a period of absolute irrelevance for the NWA.
I mean, they've never gotten back. I don't think they've ever gotten back to this level, even as the secondary title in WCW. I mean, I guess we can argue about, like, the early years of TNA.
Yeah, but ECW putting them in a toilet a year later doesn't really help either.
But yeah, a pretty disastrous decision for the NWA to pull out here. Didn't hurt WCW at all. The NWA didn't mean anything by this point.
No, it's just a name. in the eyes of fans, I imagine like if you were a fan of NWA, then you just either stop watching wrestling altogether because the South is dead and there's no more Southern wrestling that exists, or you just accept that WCW is NWA now and you just move on.
I wonder how many people really understood the difference between WCW and NWA at that point.
I really don't think that they ever did. I feel
Really,
like
since WCW branded themselves as the NWA for a while.
I also think that like even in the territory days, like I don't think it really occurred to people in their small town like, oh hey, like we're part of the NWA, our random territory that we have here. Like no, you just know your territory, right?
And you know who the world champion is.
Yeah, the inner workings of wrestling were not that well known at the time. We're spoiled now that we know all of that shit, like sort of post everything. I just don't think it was that common knowledge.
Vader has basically been the world champion all year. He beat Simmons for the title on December 30th, 92, so just 2 days after the previous Starrcade. He did lose the belt to Sting during the European tour, but he won it back at the end of the tour. So I think that was just something to try to pop business in Europe to do a title change over there.
Yeah, that doesn't really count. That's no different from like Flair dropping it at every fucking territory he goes to.
They spent all year building to this big Vader versus Sid match for the title here at Starrcade. They bring in Sid in early 93 and they team him and Vader up there. The masters of the power bomb, and the idea is they're going to split. Sid's going to go babyface. Sid is going to beat Vader for the belt at Starrcade, and he's going to be the guy going forward. They've already filmed weeks and weeks of TV with Sid as the champion before this because they're doing the tapings at Disney at this point.
Now, before we get into what else is going to happen, which is a lot, a whole goddamn lot, how do you feel like Sid would have done as the champion?
I think it would have been great until he inevitably self-destructed.
But like, you think he would have like been a good babyface champion for them?
Sid was never not over. Like That was never like fans being into Sid was never the problem. The problem was he couldn't keep it together.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, no, I think it would have been great until he cracked under the pressure because he was an incredibly self-destructive individual.
There's a part in the back of my mind that will always wonder, like, what if he's the champ when Hogan shows up? Like, that's interesting.
I mean, they headlined that WrestleMania and it didn't draw flies.
And I mean, maybe this wouldn't have either. And like, everything has to be couched with the fact that like Flair and Hogan together here draws outrageously well. So like, that's pretty good. But I also feel like Hogan's first pay-per-view would have drawn with anybody, really.
Yeah. But yeah, so everything is going according to plan until they do another European tour and things get real ugly. This is another thing that I think everybody's heard at least the broad strokes of, but we'll go into a little bit of detail here. They're in England. The boys are out drinking at a hotel bar after the show. Everybody's drinking. They're not just drinking. They're also like, dosing themselves? Is GHB at this time?
Yes, that's what it is. Like, that's what they're able to get access to on that tour. So, like, everybody's just passing it around.
Jesus. Yeah. Like, things get boisterous. I've heard Sid starts, like, ribbing Arn Anderson about how Arn had to take a pay cut. And, like, Arn is down to, like, $150,000 a year, and Sid is making $600,000 a year. Arn fires back that Sid can't work for shit and he's never drawn on top, which both of those things are true.
I mean, it is accurate, though. I mean, it's mean.
Yeah. Things get heated. They're both standing up. They're about to fight. Doug Dillinger kind of gets in the middle of it, tells them both, like, get out of here, go up to your rooms, cool off. Like, enough's enough. They both walk away. Sid stews on things. Sid breaks off the leg of a chair or a table, and he goes to Arn's room, and from here accounts differ.
Now, I would like to trust in the account of one Too Cold Scorpio, who I believe, due to the fact that he has never given a shit about what anyone thinks ever, probably has the most honest point of view and unbiased, as he's not a noted friend of either of these particular guys. Now, Too Cold Scorpio was apparently walking back to his room after smoking a gigantic joint on the balcony of this hotel.
Good man. Never hurt anybody.
He was just wandering down the hallway when he saw Sid carrying a big-ass chair leg in his hand. He says, "Hey, Sid, baby, what are you doing with that?" Sid proceeds to knock on the door. Arn opens it, and Sid tries to murder him like a barbarian with a club. By the time Scorpio gets down to the room, there's blood everywhere.
Yeah, so Arn's account is he hears somebody pounding on the door. He looks through the peephole. He doesn't see anybody. He opens the door, at which point he gets hit in the face with what would be the chair leg. And then it's fuzzy, and he's like, oh, and then there were scissors. Like, Arn grabbed the scissors.
Yeah,
like,
let's be clear.
These are Arn's scissors that he introduced. Like, this is the part that I didn't get for a long time, that I didn't realize. And, like, this is why Sid wasn't blackballed from wrestling, is Arn is the one who introduces the scissors into this equation. Yeah. Sid gets them away from him and proceeds to stab him with them, which is horrible. But, like, Sid got stabbed. That's what Arn
was trying to do, yes.
Like, this whole thing is very out of control. Sid is more in the wrong than Arn, but Arn should not have opened the door here.
Yeah, Sid escalates the shit out of this and is the one who is the most violent. But A, they were equally talking shit to each other and causing problems downstairs. B, Arn opened that door to fight Sid. Like, he can say that he didn't know who was outside all he fucking wanted. By all accounts, he was holding the scissors when he opened the door. Let's be clear about that.
Like, I'm sure there's a code of silence and the boys aren't supposed to snitch on each other, but, like, Arn should have just called hotel security. Now, or, like, call the front desk and be like, hey, can you get Doug Dillinger from the bar and tell him to come up? Like, don't open the door.
Now, let's be clear. There are only two people who are within shouting distance of this happening when it's going down. This is the most important part. Scorpio immediately throws himself in between these two people. I want you to imagine in your head trying to grab Psycho Sid holding scissors, stabbing a man to death, and throwing yourself in front of that man.
Arn isn't exactly a small guy either. What?
Yeah.
Arn's probably 6'3", 270. Like, Arn's a big dude.
Scorpio's smaller than both of them.
Yeah.
Scorpio successfully pulls Sid off of Arn and tells him to go down to the fucking bar now.
Yeah.
And saves Arn's life. But, like, just straight up, like, this, he would have gotten killed. Arn
has stab wounds in his throat and within an inch of his eye. So, easily could have lost his eye, but also could have easily been killed here.
Yeah.
Lost Sid was trying a lot to kill of blood.
Yeah. Sid was trying to commit a murder here. Sid would have gone to prison. Arn would have been dead.
Yeah. Both saves Arn's life and saves Sid from doing a lengthy prison sentence for murder here.
The Too Cold Scorpio is a fucking hero.
Who was the other guy?
Yeah, you know who's not a hero? The other person who, by all accounts, was just standing there drinking some water. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Doesn't lift a goddamn finger.
That is so disappointing to me because I'm such a Steamboat fan.
Doesn't that seem right, though? That, like, his whole family man, like, nice guy gimmick is such a put on. But also, can you blame him? Like,
no, look, yeah, you gotta, I mean, these are not, in my understanding, these are dull scissors, which is like the other thing that saves Arn is these are not pointed scissors. Like, these are dull, rounded scissors that I assume he just used to, like, trim his beard.
Which is goddamn lucky, because he'd be dead. Yeah. But also, like, put yourself in that spot, man. Like, I'm a nice guy. I don't know if I'm jumping in. If somebody who's 6'9", 300 pounds of brick muscle is wielding scissors.
I don't want any part of that.
No, fuck no.
Yeah, no. The fact that Scorpio, like, gets let go by, I mean, I don't know if he actually liked being in Oh, Flair came back.
Yeah, see, here's what happens. This is another story. But Ric Flair, we told the story, I believe, last time of Scorpio jogging by Ric Flair and his wife on the beach and his dick falls out and that pisses Flair off.
Is this that tour?
Well, no, that did happen on this tour. But then later on this tour, Scorpio's getting high with the Nasty Boys in the dressing room and Flair finds out about it. So he has the office arrange a drug test for Scorpio when he gets back. And that's how he gets fired. So Scorpio saves Arn Anderson's life, and Ric Flair still gets him shit canned when the tour ends. Because he be slanging.
No charges are pressed. Neither guy, I think, is interested in pressing charges here, and like they're both about to leave the country, so England doesn't give a shit. Like,
yeah, it is fortunate for everyone involved this did happen in a foreign country, because if
Yeah.
it had happened on American soil, Sid's in jail. Like,
Yeah. This is assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder.
and they're known here. They're not just like random wrestlers from another country. Like, everyone knows who these two people are.
WCW's PR response was like, kind of to play it up, like, oh, look how rough and tough and crazy these wrestlers are.
That is not the right PR move.
Yeah.
Though the funny thing is that this is where Psycho Sid comes from. When WWE brings him in, they're just like, let's bring in the psychopath.
It's remarkable that Sid and Arn end up working together again in WCW after this.
In both of their shoot interviews that take place later on, they're both like, you know what, I was a fucking asshole. Like,
yeah. Water under the bridge, I guess.
Yeah, we were on drugs and we were drunk and it was on a tour. We were all pent up. Like, we were all to blame here.
Just something about these European tours and these guys being far away from home just like brings out the evil in all these guys.
Well, there's no supervision.
Yeah.
And they have nothing to do except ride the bus. So they're just getting drunk and high all day long.
I guess that's the other thing to keep in mind is like today they play video games, they post on social media, like they have other things to do. Here it's just like, what are we going to do when we get to the hotel? Go to the bar and get smashed.
So you just imagine that they're sitting on the bus and like they're just talking shit to each other for like days before this finally pops off.
Tiny cramped buses. They're working every day, taking bumps. They're sore. Their pay is shit. Like, you understand how things escalate fast.
Yeah, all you're doing for fun is watching the other guy wrestle. So you talking shit to him about how much he sucks, and like, it escalates, man. This is one of the wildest events. But the other thing too is how much the narrative is twisted. Like you said that you didn't really realize that Arn was a part of this. It's presented that way to the wrestling public.
Yeah,
like
it's always just like Sid stabbed Arn with scissors, which is literally true, but not the whole story.
This is one of the first times that you really see that, like, the Dave Meltzers of the world really driving a narrative to the rest of the wrestling industry that sticks.
Yeah, it's just Sid did not have the right friends, and Arn did.
Yep, and this colors basically the rest of Sid's career, as he gets shit on by people everywhere he goes, even though all he does is make money and get over.
You try to kill one guy.
Hey, try to kill one guy. Come on, man.
I don't want to dismiss that. Like, as far as like things to get somebody a bad rap, this is a pretty good one.
Yeah, we're the biggest Sid marks in the world. We've established that. This might as well be called the Psycho Sid podcast, where we love Psycho Sid. He did try to murder a guy this one time, and that's not great. We're not endorsing that. We don't love
that.
We don't like to endorse murder here on the show.
So Sid is fired. Starrcade is fucked. This happens like 6 weeks before the show, so they've got to throw together a new main event. I mean, I think your only real options are Flair and Sting for an opponent for Vader, and you've done Sting, so you might, and the show's in Charlotte, so you might as well do Flair.
Now, the funny thing is that, and basically any other time, like if Vince had gotten a hold of this, it would have been like, yeah, we're going to have Vader beat Flair and Charlotte in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
The idea that you would come to the conclusion that, like, oh, maybe we should have him beat Vader is a pretty wild thing.
Like an opportunity to throw together like a Rocky movie over the span of a couple weeks. And in such contrast to what they've been doing all year, because what they've been doing all year are these ridiculous like mini movies with Vader's White Castle of Fear and the Cheatham the dwarf blowing up the boat that Sting and Davey Boy are on. Like, they've been doing these ridiculous, cheesy, over-the-top storylines. And here they just go with the most like low-key human. You know, Ric Flair, the aging gunfighter, has one last great run in him.
And it's very similar to Rocky, honestly. Like, it even gets into it that way, is the idea of, like, he's just there, and Vader's talking all this shit and appeals to his pride. And he's like, you know what? Fuck you. I'm a man.
Yeah,
I still
a
got
man
it.
stands up.
I'll show you. I can do it one more time.
Yeah.
And we'll get into it too. Like, the presentation of that storyline on this show is some of the best work this company ever
It's
did.
incredible. Some of the best stuff I've ever seen in any wrestling company.
It's unbelievable. Like, this is not a storyline that is new to any of us. Like, we've seen versions of this before. Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker is the same basic idea. For that matter, Ric Flair versus Shawn Michaels is the same basic idea.
But this is done way better than that.
Oh my God, this is perfect. If Ric Flair retires after this match and says, like, I did it one last time and now I'm vacating the belt, I just needed to know I could do it, and he walked away, that's the greatest end to a career anyone's ever had.
Yeah. Fortunately for them, they had already shot an angle where Vader was beating up Flair and Sid made the save. So they just edited out the part where Sid made the save and aired it.
Yeah, and it's just Vader beating the shit out of Flair with no conclusion. That's the best.
So Vader pinned Flair at the Clash of the Champions, but the decision was overturned because Vader had attacked the referee. So Vader was disqualified. He kept the title. At the Battle Bowl pay-per-view in November, we'll have to do that sometime because we love us the Battle Bowl.
Man, how did they not put that on this show? Come on, guys, I need my fix.
Flair challenged Vader again, and Vader said no, but then Flair said he would put his career on the line if Vader would put the title up, and Vader agreed to do it.
Wait a minute. This is so much like Michael's Undertaker. Triple H booked that shit, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
He fucking loves this shit.
Without the, like, Flair going, no Flair, like, downward spiral, dark side part of it.
Yeah. So that had just kind of been the reality at this point. Like, it's not that he's had a dark side necessarily, and when he came back, he was reasonably successful, but it's just an age thing in this case. Like, he's done. Yeah. Everyone knows he's getting towards the end, even though he's still wrestling 30 years later.
Look up, how old is he actually here?
I want to say he's early 40s.
Yeah, he's not. Ric Flair, born 49, so he is 44.
Okay.
He's not young, but he's same age as, say, AJ Styles.
Yeah, but that's a different thing. Now everybody...
Harder years Ric Flair lived.
Let's say if Ric Flair's 44, he's got another good 10 years in him.
So, to get into the show, it's Monday, December 27th, 1993. I don't know what it was about Mondays in Starrcade.
It's so weird. I would never watch a Starrcade on a Monday.
Why not just do the day after Christmas on Sunday?
Yes.
Or Christmas night on Saturday.
Or Christmas night. Before the NBA took over Christmas night, that was wide open for everybody.
We're at the Independence Arena in Charlotte, North Carolina. There's a crowd of about 8,200 on hand. They've got about 7,000 paid for a $65,000 gate. That's just shy of a sellout. I mean, those are pretty good numbers for WCW at this point. Like, for context, their house shows are drawing under $10,000 at the gate. Like, they're drawing a few hundred fans for their house shows.
It's just so wild to me that $60,000 is good. As we referred to on the last one, like, at this point, New Japan's big shows are doing like $1 million. It's fucking ridiculous.
It's dire. This was about as low as they ever got. Like, business in 93 was up year over year from the previous year. Getting Flair back had definitely helped.
Sure. But also I will argue all day, all this company needed was a big long run with Vader on top.
Yeah.
Like, that's what gets fans interested in the show.
Yeah. I mean, as we've agreed, the mistake they made was not switching the title from Vader to Simmons was a huge mistake.
Absolutely.
Vader should have just run with the title for a year when he got it.
Yep.
The show does a 0.55 buy rate for 120,000 buys. That's up from about 90,000 the previous year. It's pretty much in line with what Fall Brawl and Halloween Havoc had done. It's twice as much as the Battle Bowl did, which is why there was never another Battle Bowl pay-per-view.
Not a shock, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, again, 120,000 buys, not great, but they can do much worse. On commentary, we've got the team of Tony Schiavone and Jesse Ventura. I would say much better chemistry between these two than JR and Jesse.
Oh, unimaginably better. Like, Jesse just needs somebody to bully. And honestly, Tony Schiavone is the bottom bitch of wrestling commentators. Like, he just needs to be bossed around.
Schiavone is perfect for this role.
Absolutely. And he would play this same role with other people. Like, sardonic, cynical Tony Schiavone, who gets pushed around by Dusty Rhodes and Bobby Heenan during the Attitude Era, is good. But, like, young, naive Tony, who's just trying to do his job while Jesse obliterates him, is great.
Jesse's giving him the facts of life.
Like, on 3 different periods on this show, Jesse says something and Tony's like, really? Oh, shit.
Opening package, all about Flair. They start with photos of him as a little kid, then him in his high school football uniform, highlights of his career, and then it transitions to the monster Vader. Perfect opening package.
This package rules. I can't give enough praise to this entire production team for all of this. Like, they set the tone right here, right at the start. They're like, the only thing that matters on this show is this match, and it matters. Ric Flair's entire legacy is on the line here.
Yeah.
Everything that he is, if you were watching in 1993, and you probably were a fan who had been watching since like the mid 80s, early 80s, that's not unusual to think. It's only been 10 years.
Yeah.
You've watched Ric Flair grow up. You've watched him become the man, be the man, and now it's coming to an end. It's a bittersweet time. It's crazy.
Yeah. Nostalgia, the pain from an ancient wound.
Absolutely. Like, you love Ric Flair.
But he can never be a young man again.
And now he's going up against something that's far more dangerous than anything he's ever faced, even at his peak.
He's never been a man like this. Never fought a Vader.
Yeah, for the majority of his run, he was fighting like athletic dudes just like him. There's nothing like this. This is like Rocky IV. Like, he's up against Drago.
This isn't a man. This is a monster.
Yeah.
Then we go to Tony Schiavone and Jesse Ventura. They show footage of Vader arriving early at the arena. They show him working out in the ring before the show. They say that Flair has not left for the arena yet. He lives in Charlotte, so he can afford to take his time getting there. But we go to the Flair house. Flair is there with Gene Okerlund and his family. We see David, Reed, and very young Charlotte / Ashley. She'd only be probably 6 or 7 years old here.
It's very cute to see a young Charlotte Flair on this show.
Yeah.
It's devastating. Like it was like a punch to the gut.
To see Reed.
Not only is Reed on the show, but the amount that Rick dotes on him. Like, that's his boy.
Yeah.
And like David is just
David by this point David's going to be wrestling in WCW. David is, probably college student. I don't know exactly how old he is, but like David's a grown up. Like, Reed is his little boy.
Yeah, and like every time they go to the family, like he's like holding Reed or like hugging Reed or like.
Reed is kind of camera shy, like he's a little kid.
Man,
probably scared that his dad is going to fight this monster.
And they sell that well. Part of it is that they're all really bad actors.
Yes.
Especially Flair's wife is the worst actor imaginable. Like, when she eventually gets to talk at the end of this show, it's real bad. But what it is it gives the sense that everyone's very somber. Like, this is not a celebratory occasion. They're watching their dad march off to die.
Like, he is going into war, and he is probably not coming back from this.
But Flair, for his part, does maybe the most masterful acting of his entire career. He is quiet.
This is such a different... I mean, we talked about, like, from 83, how weird it was, how reserved he was. Like, this is so another level than this. Like, yeah. Flair in his suit and his tie, and he's just... Yeah, like you can barely hear him. He is reflective and pensive. And it's very different, great acting.
And it's so genius to send Gene out too, because they have this whole conversation where like, Gino, you're one of my best friends. Like, you've been up and down the roads with me for years and years.
Gene has just come over from the WWF like weeks before this. Perfect timing.
It's also funny because I seriously doubt they are best friends. They've never worked in the same territory with each other.
I'm sure they love drinking together, though.
I'm sure. Maybe they worked together.
I'm sure they hung out when Flair was in the WWF.
Probably when he was in the AWA too, because they were both there at the same
Yeah.
time. So that's probably true. But it's just funny that like they have that instant easy connection where Gene's just like, Rick, I don't know if you can do this, man. Like you're up against a monster tonight. And he's like, oh, God, Gino, I'm gonna do my best. It's been a great career. I'm gonna try. You can see in his eyes that he's got all this pride, but that he's afraid. And that sells this match more than any promo, more than any video package ever could. It's just watching the man drive from his house to the arena scared.
I love seeing. You remember when AEW did this with Cody and Dustin getting off the plane together, and then Cody gets in the car with Tony? We know where Cody got that from.
This is the beautiful thing, too, is when you talk about wanting to make wrestling more real, what you don't mean is in the ring more real necessarily. What you mean is making them feel like people and giving you a chance to get insight on them. Like, I don't feel like I know Richard Flyer any more now than I did when I first started watching this pay-per-view. But this window into his mentality as he gets ready for this big match.
And we always hear the line from Vince and from the WWF world, their characters. Like, this is character development.
Yes.
This is making Ric Flair a fully rounded human character. Now, the irony is the character Ric Flair had spent the year running around with Fifi the maid on screen. Now, Fifi, ironically, is Flair's current wife. Years later, they reconnected and ended up getting married. But yeah, like Flair the character is a little removed from Flair the humble family man that we're seeing here.
We're retconning that. That didn't happen.
Fifi the maid is out of the picture.
But no, there's just something so stark compared to everything we've seen on pretty much every Starrcade before this, with what we watch today in wrestling so much that misses out on this, where everything is either purely about what happens in the ring or it's about making characters like big and expansive and ridiculous. This is such a simple, toned down moment.
The one thing that feels very similar is the Roman Reigns Usos deal.
Yes, the reason that that's affecting us so much is because you can feel it. Like it's so simple.
And similarly, they dug up like the pictures of them as kids and playing football together and all that. Like that presentation really reminds me of this. May have been inspired by it.
And Roman is doing the same thing with his promos, kind of that Flair is doing here. You don't have to be loud and ridiculous. Like if you have something to say that matters, you can be quiet about it.
Then we've got our opening match as Too Cold Scorpio and Marcus Bagwell take on Paul Roma and Paul Orndorff, the team of Pretty Wonderful. Bagwell and Scorpio appear to have gotten their tights made for Halloween Havoc and are still wearing them here.
Does seem that way. Can I just say, I love Scorpio and Bagwell as a team.
Yeah.
Like, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Like, they look good together. They have, like, some, like, synchronized dance moves to start off things. Like, putting Scorpio in a tag team is a great idea. Giving Bagwell more experience that way. Scorpio has even said that, like, he thought that this was a great idea, that it was going to work. I don't know why they didn't keep them together.
Would have been best. This is a much better version of the American males.
Hell yeah. I mean, they don't keep them together because Scorpio gets fired, but also Scorpio and Bagwell fucking hate each other now. But that's a whole other thing. It's just they did a lot of shit talking back and forth online, and I think Bagwell did a shoot interview that was critical of Scorpio, and Scorpio shot back with, "Yeah, and that's why your wife left you, because you weren't giving her the dick right."
Oh. Okay.
So Bagwell challenged him to a shoot fight, and
I would pay to see that.
They were both actual crack addicts for a minute, so like stuff happens.
You mentioned a gem from a Scorpio shoot interview that Ken Shamrock showed Scorpio where to score crack. What city was that at?
He just said it was in the hood, so I don't know specifically what city it was. But when Scorpio was talking about the crack that he would do, he'd be like, yeah, thank God for Kim Shamrock. Whenever I was in the hood, I'd ask Shamrock where to go.
This might explain why Ken Shamrock's career in wrestling didn't go better.
While we're doing a tangent, I'm sorry. I didn't mean this to be like the Scorpio podcast, but I got to do one more anecdote from a Scorpio shoot interview because it's my favorite anecdote of all time. Just let me read this real quick. He's asked about being a badass. Scorpio says he's not a badass, but has no problem holding his own. He then tells us about a brawl that took place after an ECW show where Chris Candido and Tammy Sitch were leaving the arena and got surrounded by 6 guys and 4 girls who started beating them up. Tammy laid on Candido to protect him. Someone yelled backstage there was a fight, as Scorpio said New Jack and himself were the first 2 out, and then great Sasuke was right behind him. Scorpio adds that Sasuke was still wearing his mask, but nothing else, and was karate kicking people.
Sasuke comes in, and he's just hitting motherfuckers with karate kicks.
His
while his
eyebrows
dick's hanging out.
Several other wrestlers came out too. Someone shot off a gun, and Scorpio accidentally punched a woman in the face. Some people somebody threw a chair at the ECW guy, so Scorpio and New Jack jumped a fence and chased him into somebody's yard and beat that guy up. Big Dick Dudley tried to go out and wanted to murder someone, but he was on parole, so everyone held him back in the locker room. This is when Scorpio was still working for WWF, and he's just being used in ECW. A few days later, Scorpio said Vince called him into his office and heard that Scorpio was a badass. Scorpio said that he wasn't, but was really just trying to not let Vince know that he was high on weed because he smelled like it. And he said Vince loves a tough guy, and he got the best push of his career after that.
Do you think Vince knows what weed smells like?
I don't know. It's like, oh, you smell like shame.
Naive dad Vince is my favorite because I just know he is.
Every part of that story makes me so happy, even though it's wildly horrible.
ECW was a special place.
But, like, the idea that Scorpio is doing this, he's not even an ECW employee. He's a WWF employee.
No, he's just working shots there because they're trading talent.
So not only he gets called to Vince's office after this thing where he beats up a bunch of actual fans.
And Vince, he probably thinks he's going to get fired. And instead, Vince is like, God damn, we're going to start pushing you.
I hear you've been beating some asses. Good job.
That's what we need around here.
Oh, my God. Okay, sorry. That's the end of the mini Scorpio podcast inside of this Starrcade podcast.
Before the match, Teddy Long is presented with the Manager of the Year award based on his winning a vote on the WCW hotline.
Is that like a shoot?
Probably.
You know? I mean, but like just that one award. I assumed that they were going to give out like the Best Wrestler of the Year award. But like no, it's just this one, and they give him like 1 second to talk on the mic, and then the match starts.
And he's like, "Homie, don't play that," or whatever.
Yeah. He's not a very good manager. I don't know why anyone would vote for him. He's really, really bad at it, actually.
Pretty Wonderful is managed by the Assassin. I love that he wears his wrestling mask in a suit. I always mark out for that.
I'm so happy that we've watched every Starrcade from the beginning, because we've just watched this man like balloon up into the Goodyear blimp over the course of a decade.
Oh, man. Roma just recently turned heel on Eric Watts on an episode of WCW Saturday Night. Somehow Eric outlasted his dad.
Eric and Paul Roma as a tag team is just like, okay. Paul Roma is one of the most despised wrestlers in wrestling history, and I'm not clear on why. Like, guys hate his ass, and I've never been able to find out a reason.
Him and Tom Zank should have been a tag team.
I guess. Just like, the Heat Seekers.
Pretty Wonderful rushed the ring. They get cleared out by the baby faces. The faces are in control as they're working on Roma's arm. Roma manages to tag out to Orndorff. He also gets his arm worked over. There's loud Paula chants from the crowd.
Yeah, there are.
Roma tags back in. He gets put in an arm wringer, and he complains to the referee, he's hurting my arm.
He's hurting my arm.
Even Jesse has to be like, well, I don't think that's going to do anything, Shivani. Bagwell gets Orndorff in a sleeper. The ref gets distracted, putting Scorpio out of the ring. So Roma comes in from behind to break the hold. And then the referee lets him take over without having seen the tag. I always hate when they do that. That buries the referee.
Yeah, for all that Bill Watts was like, hey, the workers, you can't bury the referee or you're going to get fined because their credibility is so important. Really, like, the referees themselves do most of what accounts for it.
It's just such a trope in wrestling that, like, the heels don't actually have to tag. Like, they'll believe it if the heels say they tagged, but they'll never believe it for the faces.
If you're a referee and you spend more than half of the match intentionally not looking at stuff so that you don't look bad, you're doing a bad job. The whole match is bad.
There is a lot of that tonight, including in the main event.
Oh, yeah.
Roma hits a power slam. He goes for a splash, but Bagwell rolls out of the way. Bagwell tags to Scorpio. He comes in hot. He hits a snap suplex on Orndorff. He goes to the top. Roma tries to cut him off. Bagwell cuts off Roma. Scorpio hits a diving chop, but then the assassin hits a headbutt with his loaded mask, and Orndorff pins Scorpio. I thought that was a pretty solid opening tag match.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, mostly this was just the Scorpio show. Like, everything he does looks amazing.
Again, I can't believe they let this guy go. It's just shocking to me that Scorpio... I mean, I guess we've heard about various issues with him as we've been talking here, but kind of shocking to me he never got a bigger push in a national promotion.
I mean, it's true. Just for whatever reason, every time he did kind of get the opportunity, it just kind of went haywire on him. Just one of those snake-bit folk.
We go back to Flair and Gene in the limo. Gene brings up that this could be the end of Flair's career tonight. Flair says he's willing to accept that consequence, but he thinks he can beat Vader. Flair asks if they could spend these last couple minutes together on something more positive, and then he reminisces about, his great career, his great wins, the friends he made along the way.
It's beautiful. It's genuinely touching, honestly. And I'm
so different from what you expect to hear from Ric Flair, but like from any wrestler, like it's supposed to be macho bullshit.
And that's how you know something is up. Like that again, that puts this match over as such a big deal that even Ric Flair is like removed from his normal bullshit, and he's got to like
holding the alligators down. He's not wheeling, dealing, kiss stealing, like none of that.
Like tonight, I might lose my career, and I just want to reflect on what that career was before it goes. That's why I say, win or lose, I feel like he should have retired the next night. I know that was never the intention, and I know that that's not realistic. That's what this feels like it's leading to. This feels like a goodbye one way or the other.
Next, we've got the Shockmaster against Awesome Kong. Not that Awesome Kong.
I wish it had been. Shit.
That would have been awesome. The Shockmaster is, of course, Fred Ottman, a.k.a. Tugboat. I think we all know the story of his disastrous WCW debut, where he tripped running through a wall on live TV.
My favorite story about that is the one that Cody Rhodes told, which is... He's sitting in his living room.
Like 6?
Yeah, he's like a 6-year-old. He's got all his buddies over to watch the pay-per-view, and they're all sitting around, and like Dusty's in the room too. And they're watching, and the helmet falls off, and he stands up, and Cody just looks around at Dusty and says, "Is that Uncle Fred?"
Oh, so he trips. The wrestlers all crack up. Flair is covering his face to not laugh. Davey Boy totally breaks character and goes, "Jesus, he fell flat on his fucking ass."
And you can absolutely hear it on the broadcast.
Booker or Stevie Ray goes, "Who is that motherfucker?" And then Sid, of all people, just like totally stays in character. And he's like, "I don't care who this is. We're going to kill them in the War Games."
And Sting, who is the one actually cutting the promo, does like a blatant facepalm on camera. Like,
It's just like, I can't believe I work here.
Like the Black Scorpion is just running through his head at that moment. Like, my career sucks.
So he's got like the Shockmaster had like a sparkly cape and like a stormtrooper helmet. He's now a construction worker in a flannel shirt.
Yeah, despite the fact that he's still the Shockmaster, he's just a dude now.
I just want to point out this happened in like September, and we're 3 months later, and it's already devolved to this.
Honestly, you should have just immediately taken him off of TV and like held him off for a couple months and then re-debuted him later as a different character. You can't still be calling him the Shockmaster. You're not getting past that.
It would have been easy to just back then. It's so easy to pretend like it never happened.
Yeah, most people didn't see it, especially if it was on pay-per-view. Nobody watched.
I mean, it was on a Clash of the Champions, so it was in front of a big audience. But
right,
like, if you just never reference it on the syndicated shows, I feel like everybody will just forget.
But like, you're still rubbing it in our faces by having this guy still appear. Just have him be Fred Ottoman. Just have him be Uncle Fred for all I give a shit. You can't. Don't keep calling him by the name that buries him every time you say it.
Awesome Kong is gigantic. He's like 6'5", 400 plus pounds.
But not the good kind. He's just like sweaty, fat, gigantic.
His tag team partner is King Kong, who is equally huge. But King Kong seems to be wrestling instead of Awesome Kong, or they accidentally put on the wrong tights, because the guy in the ring's tights say King Kong.
That is very funny. Do you prefer King Kong and Awesome Kong as their team, or do you prefer when they were called Meat and Potatoes, the Fat Boys?
Where was that? Was that
on the Indies? Yeah, okay. In Memphis.
I don't remember. God. I'm sure these guys worked in Memphis. Lawler probably beat both of them for the title.
Fat Boys.
Shockmaster slams Kong and wins in 90 seconds. At least they kept it short.
But like, and this is like one of Awesome Kong's last matches in the company. Like, they're both gone. Like, soon after they win the Observer Award for Worst Tag Team of the Year, and they deserve it. But why is the Shockmaster going over on Starrcade? Why are any of these motherfuckers on Starrcade? You don't have anybody else? Anybody?
Shivani and Ventura explain that Davey Boy Smith won't be challenging Rick Rude for the international title tonight, and the boss will be taking his place. Smith had recently left the company, I believe, in a pay dispute. He has maintained that he had a deal with Watts where he was supposed to get a percentage of the houses on their European tours, and Watts didn't pay it to him. I mean, I think the percentage of those tours would have been a couple nickels based on how they drew.
It is funny, though, that, like, somebody the stature of Davey Boy Smith, is a pretty big fucking star. Like, he switches companies back and forth here, and it basically makes no difference to either company. Like, it does not matter.
No, when WCW gets him, they think they're opening up Europe and England. And turns out not. I mean, I think the issue was just like WCW didn't really have TV over there. You're not going to draw without TV.
Yeah,
but they just thought he was such a big name that he would do it. Didn't work out that way.
No, of course not.
We see Flair's limousine rolling into the arena. Him and Gene go their separate ways. Doug Dillinger and the police. I loved how like this thing just. He had a police escort rolling up to the arena. How badass did that look?
By alternate, Vader rolled up to the arena in like a Ford Fiesta that Harley Race was driving, wearing sweatpants and his Ribera jacket from Japan.
Different strokes. Definitely not allowed to talk in the car while Harley's driving.
Oh, absolutely not. God, can you imagine how bad that car smelled by the time they got there?
Oh. I don't know. Do you know if Harley like shoot managed Vader too?
I don't know the answer to that, though it would make a lot of sense because he didn't get in any trouble while he was in the company.
Be on the straight and fucking narrow, or Harley was gonna smack him.
I do like the idea of like putting him with the only guy that maybe Vader would fear.
Yeah, I mean, with a certain level of guy, they always seem to have like a real life manager. Like Jimmy Hart was actually Hogan's manager. Like he would check into the hotel for him. He'd help him get through airports, like that kind of dumb stuff. Now Vader is nowhere near as big a star as Hogan, but he's so physically large that he's going to need help with stuff.
And also, like, he's still doing like dates all over the world. Like, he needs somebody to manage all of that, so it would make sense.
Yeah.
I do wonder about that. And what you're referring to is basically what Paul Heyman does for a living now. Is he's just like
Yes.
the real life manager to the stars.
That's such a good gig he's carved out for himself. That he's just like, if they ever tried to fire him, Reigns would just be like, no.
He's literally
No, I
like
need Paul.
he's literally a sports agent. That's what
Yeah.
agents do. And like that's his job now. Is he's the sports agent to whoever the most powerful man in the company is to
He's
negotiate with Vince.
Invented a brand new role for himself.
That's fucking Paul Heyman all over, baby.
Next up for the TV title, we've got Steven Regal defending against Ricky Steamboat. As always, this is going to be a 15-minute time limit. Regal is accompanied by Sir William, who is Bill Dundee in a ridiculous, like, wig and glasses and hat.
I can't believe this is Bill Dundee. Like, I know academically that it is, but like it does not look like him. Do you know how William Regal gets his job in WCW?
Didn't he just like write letters to Bill Watts?
Yes, he literally just wrote a letter to Bill Watts and was like, "Hey, I'd like to work for you." And Bill Watts was like, "Oh, cool." And he hired him. He never saw him, never saw him.
I thought it was Mr. Electricity, Steve Regal.
Probably. So yeah, he was only like 19 at the time. Like,
he's
he was
a kid.
young. Yeah. He was born 68, so yeah, he would have been like,
it's like 25 here.
yeah. He's a baby.
It's Boxing Day, which Shivani gets to explain to Jesse.
There's no way that Jesse doesn't know what boxing is.
Incredulous. No, but it's funny to make Shivani explain it.
Yep.
Regal spends the early part of the match working on Steamboat's arm. Steamboat seizes control with a scoop slam, follows up with a flying chop. Another big chop knocks Regal down. Steamboat keeps working the arm as the announcer calls 4 minutes left. They go to the floor. The announcer calls 3 minutes. Steamboat chases Sir William and gets caught with a drop kick. Regal stomps on Steamboat. We got 2 minutes to go. Steamboat comes back with a pair of arm drags. Regal bridges out of the pin, gets Steamboat in a butterfly hold. Steamboat slips out of that, suplexes Regal as the announcer calls 1 minute. Steamboat runs Regal into Sir William with 30 seconds left. Steamboat hits a hangman. He goes to the top. He comes off for the flying crossbody, but Regal ducks under it. Steamboat then hits a German suplex, but time expires. A little disappointed in that. I was really hoping for a better match there, but they spent most of it just kind of laying around the mat.
Yeah, Regal isn't quite what he would eventually become. I do love that this is Ricky Steamboat's tour of like, let me work all the young guys and just see what they got. Like,
give me Pillman, give me Austin. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do really love that. Like, the stuff that he does with Austin is outrageously great. This one's kind of a miss, but I can see why they thought it would be good.
Yeah.
And I can see why they see a lot in Regal, because also Regal's like 6'5". Like, I know that you don't really think about
buff
that.
Here too. He's in shape.
Young William Regal looked like a future star. It's unfortunately the drug problem kind of derails that.
Drugs wasted the best years of his career.
But yeah, and he's sort of like a shriveled version of himself later in WWE. But here he's looking like the man.
There are just so many fun quirks to a Regal match. Like when he locks up with a guy and he's trying to leverage him down, he uses his foot to break their knee.
Like he does stuff that nobody does. And like to such an extent that his matches kind of feel weird sometimes because you're used to all the normal tropes and he doesn't do them. He does his own stuff.
Yeah, it's just we prize smoothness in wrestling, and Regal wrestles in a much more kind of realistic and less smooth style.
Yeah, he wrestles like the kind of guy who did learn wrestling in like a pit at a carnival.
Carnivals, yeah. No, when he takes somebody down, it looks like he actually struggled to get them down.
Yeah, which is cool. I really like that.
Tony and Jesse talk about the main event. Tony talks about how reserved Flair was on the way in. Jesse says retirement isn't so bad.
This is my favorite Jesseism of the entire night. Is that like Tony's trying to sell the seriousness and the severity of the fact that his career might end, and Jesse just undermines the whole thing by being like, "Yeah, retirement's pretty good. I kind of like
I'm
it.
loving retirement.
You get paid out the ass to do nothing. It's awesome."
Yeah, if you win giant lawsuits against Vince McMahon, you
Yeah,
do.
it's not the same for everyone, Jesse. Shut up.
Then we've got Tex Slazenger and Shanghai Pierce against Cactus Jack and Max Payne.
Yeah, we do.
Tex Slazenger is Midian. Max Payne is Man Mountain Rock from the WWF. He looks like a fucking pervert in his jacket and gloves and like sweatpants.
Yeah, it makes the fact that his name used to be Beater like a lot more ironic. Okay, we're gonna do a thing from now on. Anytime we cover any show that has Max Payne on it, which I can't imagine there are going to be a lot more of those.
I think we've done all of them now.
I'm gonna read this selection from his Wikipedia page because I think I've read it once before on a show, but it bears repeating. In 1988, Peterson developed the character Max Payne, short for Maximum Pain, a sinister, grungy, Jimi Hendrix-loving heavy metal guitarist. His original idea was Lucifer Payne, but he felt it was too foreboding. He used the name Max Payne, hailing from Hell's Kitchen nationally in the United States, as well as Europe and Japan. The character had a neo-noir look and feel as far as the live theater of professional wrestling would allow.
What?
Yeah.
He wrote that himself, right?
Yeah, he did. Guys, also, it says the character had a neo-noir look and feel, and then there's a little citation needed that someone clearly added to that. Guys, if you write your own fucking wiki page, we can tell, okay?
Jesse refers to Charlotte as the Hooters capital of the world, and then jokes that they're going to cut his mic off.
That is a sick burn from Jesse.
Just buries Charlotte in one sentence.
Fucking love it.
I should note that Cactus just main evented Halloween Havoc against Vader 2 months before this, and now he's in this match.
This is like the Jabroni Bowl. I can't, for the life of me, figure out why the fuck any of these people are here. All of these people are in WWE in the next year.
Yeah.
Right? That's crazy to me. Like, Vince offered all of these people jobs. This match has more ugly motherfucker per capita than any other match that has ever been contested.
Not very much of interest happens here. Payne backdrops Cactus over the top onto Slazenger on the floor. That is a good way to get your neck broken, to have a guy land on you like that.
That's a brutal bump to take, and it didn't look very good, so it wasn't for anything.
Payne gets Pierce in his armbar finisher, which is called the Painkiller.
Yeah, it is. The Painkiller.
Cactus tags in, hits the double arm DDT, and the Faces get the win.
You can feel the sadness in Cactus Jack here.
Yeah.
He is bummed out.
I mean, he got a taste of the main event, and they ruined it with the stupid Lost in Cleveland storyline.
And then here he is back down here, and he knows he's never going to get up there again.
Yeah.
It's over. He's done.
Yeah. He's trading in the Colonial in Atlanta for the Sweatbox apartment in Long Island.
He will proceed to do the very greatest work of his career. So, good on him.
That's what it took.
The beautiful thing is that a lot of these WCW mid-carders are going to get so mad at working for this shitty company.
This is what the Attitude Era is built on.
It's the rate. Every big star from the Attitude Era basically did their time suffering in the mid-card of these two horrible companies that suck in 1993 and 94 and are desperate to escape.
It's what it takes to make great art.
It is. Suffering.
We go to Mean Gene, who shills for the hotline. They're running a poll on whether all title matches should be 2 out of 3 falls. Please, God, no.
I wonder where the hell they got this poll from. They can't really have been considering that, right?
Because
that's like, That's how the NWA title was contested in like 1953. That's not.
Sounds like a Bill Watts idea.
You can't do that.
That wasn't no, that was a thing that I think on WCW Saturday Night for a little bit, the main event was always 2 out of 3 falls.
I mean, that's where came from. That used to be the rule with the NWA title. I think like right up until the 80s, like that's how you had to contest those titles.
That's the famous split. There was a 1 fall title change, and they used that as the excuse for Buddy Rogers to break away with the title.
Exactly. So, I mean, I guess I get how that's part of the collective living memory of a bunch of these old timers, but don't do this.
Oh, and then Mean Gene interviews NASCAR star Kyle Petty. He talks about how his dad, Richard Petty, recently retired and hopes Ric Flair doesn't meet the same fate tonight.
He was good. I like seeing him on here. As somebody whose dad obsessively watched NASCAR as a kid, I very vividly know who Kyle Petty is.
He was kind of the David Flair of NASCAR, right?
Nah, he wound up being wild. He was very successful on his own merits, just not as successful as his greatest of all time dad. So maybe more like a Charlotte.
Okay. Next up, we've got 2 out of 3 falls for the U.S. title. Dustin Rhodes defends against stunning Steve Austin. Rhodes successfully defended the title against Austin Halloween Havoc. I've seen many, many matches that these guys had, and unfortunately, this is not one of the better ones.
Yeah, they've had some matches between these two. It was kind of like a perfect matchup. Like, both of these guys bust ass in the ring. They're wildly opposite characters. You could sort of see this as being like The Rock and Triple H, where, like, in a few years, this match is happening in the main event, you know?
Sure as hell should have, but yeah, both their careers, take a bit of a detour.
Yeah, they do.
Austin is out first. His WCW theme is an absolute banger.
I love it so much.
That guitar line hits and the crowd comes to their feet.
Like, I thought somebody like Vader was coming out. Like,
it's way better than Vader's music.
This music kicks ass.
It's funny. They reused this. It's just some random piece of stock music. They reused this for a bunch of guys. Like Psychosis used this later on.
It's just a really good piece of music. Like this. He's still doing like the fucking Hollywood
He's got the
Blonde
camera
stuff.
Hollywood Blonde thing, yeah.
If
the Blondes have recently split.
If somebody could have just gotten a hold of him and been like, hey, shave that terrible fucking hair.
Quit being a fucking goof.
Take off that weird thing. Stop doing the camera thing. Yeah. But keep doing everything else exactly the same, and you will become a megastar. Because this is the exact same in-ring style that he is as Stone Cold Steve Austin. Just with like a little bit of like...
It's so much... He can move so much better because it's before his neck injury. And there's such a difference. I mean, this is the way he wrestled as Steve Austin before he got his neck broke. It's like, Stone Cold versus Bret Hart. This is how he worked because his knees were better too. But yeah, the movement here, the way he bumps and pops back up.
Like, there is very compelling evidence to be said that he is one of the greatest professional wrestlers on earth before all of his injuries catch up with him. He's amazing.
But he doesn't have the character to match yet.
Exactly.
It's the character that matters.
Thank God he gets Stone Cold when he does, because he would have been out of the industry by the time he was 35 because of all the injuries.
That's true for so many guys, though, that their physical prime and their character prime tend not to align.
Oh, yeah. Most guys don't really figure it out as a character until they're like mid-30s, maybe later. And so that only coincides with their bodies being able to keep up for like 3 to 5 years. Most guys only have a peak that's like 3 to 5 years long.
Yeah. But as I've observed, most wrestlers hit their peak drawing years, late 30s.
Yep. That's when the crowd is most familiar with them, when they've really figured out the psychology of everything, and they can go just enough.
Jesse says he's confused about Richard Petty's son. He thought his son was Tom Petty from the Heartbreakers.
God damn it, Jesse. That's a dad joke, and a bad dad joke.
Dustin comes out in some slick white trunks. Also love his WCW theme. They call him the Natural Dustin Rhodes.
That's the corniest fucking theme of all time, but not in a bad way.
Rhodes has been champion for nearly a year, although his reign was interrupted by a double pin against Rick Rude. He would beat Rude in the later match to become the undisputed champion. This is best 2 out of 3 falls. We've got a 30-minute time limit and 30-second rest period between the falls.
This is what I probably would have bought the pay-per-view for, because like this seems like it's a setup for a dynamite match.
Rhodes gets first blood with a big elbow. Austin bails out of the ring. Colonel Parker has a cigar, and that motivates Jesse to go on a tangent about Rush Limbaugh and how he says we should be giving cigarettes to kindergartners.
Yeah.
What is going on with Jesse at this point?
This is not the only time that he ever brings up Rush Limbaugh.
Oh my God, the number of times he would be like, Shane Douglas looks like a Rush Limbaugh fan with that haircut.
Like, it's clear that Jesse's not particularly fond of Rush Limbaugh. I thought for sure, I actually did research on this, which is not something I usually do for these podcasts, by the way. Because I thought for sure that he had challenged Rush Limbaugh to a match, but it turned out it was Bill O'Reilly that he challenged to a wrestling match.
Was it over waterboarding?
Yes, it sure was.
Okay, I have a vague memory of that too.
Yep.
Slow going early, lots of takedowns and holds. I haven't followed Jesse. I assume he's like a QAnon weirdo now.
Oh, God. He's like the grandfather of the QAnon.
He's the conspiracy king.
I'm sure he's a hero to them.
They go out to the floor. Dustin throws Austin over the railing and into the crowd. Nice bump from Austin there.
Hell yeah.
Austin gets back in the ring. He offers Dustin a handshake. Dustin hits him with a right hook. Austin finally gets in some offense. Dustin cuts him off with a drop kick. Dustin gets distracted by Parker. Austin takes advantage with a back suplex. He goes for a knee drop, but Dustin moves. Dustin hits the bionic elbow, a big clothesline, a power slam. Austin kicks out at 2 as Parker jumps up on the apron. Dustin runs Austin into him. Austin spills over the top rope. That's a disqualification. Austin wins the first fall. I should note that under traditional wrestling rules, this should have ended Austin's opportunity to win the title.
Yes, that is absolutely correct.
Right? I've never seen a title change hands. This was like a cheesy finish they would use in the 80s, where the babyface would win the 2 out of 3 falls match, but it'd be like, oh, but because he won one of the falls by disqualification, he doesn't win the title.
Yes, disqualification does not count. I just... When he went over the top rope and they called the fall, I was so disappointed because I was like, I thought we were fucking past this. This is the stupidest rule in the history of professional wrestling, and I hate it so virulently.
Rhodes runs Austin into the ring post. Austin blades. Parker is helped back to the locker room. And then the lights go out.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, like lights go out in the arena. They turn spotlights on the ring, and the guys just keep wrestling, and I love it.
I thought, based on the timing, that the idea was that Parker had gone and turned the lights out because Rhodes was beating Austin's ass.
Parker killed the lights, and Austin would roll him up and like grab the trunks.
That is not what happens. Rhodes just keeps beating his ass in the dark.
Jesse says that it's turned into a dark match, which is what I thought a dark match was when I first started watching wrestling. I assumed it meant they wrestled in the dark.
I thought it was too.
Right?
I thought at least that they didn't have like the house lights on, so it would just be like lights over the ring or something like that, and then they turn all the other lights on.
A ladder match is a match with a ladder. A casket match is a match with a casket. A cage match is a match with a cage. Shouldn't a dark match be a match in darkness?
Yeah, it'd just be like flashlight tag.
Just asking questions here.
I mean, come on.
Dustin with a 10 punch. Austin kind of sloppily trips him and gets the pin. Looked like Dustin's shoulder came up. Austin wins 2-0. That was a huge disappointment.
Yeah, this sucked. This was the match that we were counting on to kind of anchor the entire show, and it's such a disappointment. This match is 24 minutes long. It feels much shorter than that because it never feels like it goes anywhere.
Next up, we've got a match for the WCW International Heavyweight Championship as Rick Rude defends against the Boss. The International Heavyweight title is what they've renamed the Big Gold Belt since the NWA left. They are pretending that there's a thing called WCW International and that there's like WCW affiliates all over the world.
I kind of love that idea because who's gonna check? I mean, honestly, sure.
And in this era, no one could.
So, and I also love the idea that like, well, we got to call it something. We just can't keep calling it the Big Gold Belt.
They actually did that for a few weeks.
They literally called it the Big Gold Belt.
Very meta. I mean, if you ask me which belt I'd rather have based on aesthetics, I'd way rather have this than the actual WCW title.
Oh, yeah, it's not even close. Like, this belt kicks ass. Like, there's nothing not to love about it.
Rick Rude's WCW music is amazing.
He's ravishing.
Da-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na.
This is one of the great wrestling themes.
Yeah. Shame more people haven't heard this. Like, Google this right now. This is worth a listen.
Hell yeah.
Like, straight off an aerobics tape from the 80s.
But like that's part of its charm is that it seems like it should be his entrance theme.
Simply ravishing, ravishing, ravishing Rick Rude.
And they do this thing where like he comes out and like the camera's like basically centered right on his abs looking up at his face as if you're giving him a blowjob as he walks to the ring. And and the fans are booing him out of the arena.
Oh, except you can see the lust in the eyes of the ladies.
This is the best Rick Rude there ever was. This moment right here. It literally goes off the rails like not 6 months from now. And then he's done forever.
Now, unfortunately, he gets his back broken in Japan not long after this.
It's a huge shame because he's finally figured it out. The look is on point.
Yeah.
The music is there. He's got the crowd, the fans fucking hate him. He's got the belt. He looks like God. You could have built the whole promotion around this version of Rick Rude.
What is it that's working? He's slimmed down a little bit. He's got a slimmer physique, which is going to make him more mobile. He's cut his hair short, which I think looks great, way better than the frizzy perm.
Yes. He's grown out his chest hair, so he just looks sleazy.
Oh, my God. When he takes the robe off to reveal the belt and the chiseled abs and the chest hair.
He just looks like this guy stuck in the 80s, but he's just so... The fact that the gay community never fully got their claws into Rick Rude is unfortunate because he should be an icon. This man is a beautiful man.
Really is the guy your mom said not to worry about.
He really is. I swear to God, like this is very good. And also like in the ring, he's still hit or miss Rick Rude, but there's been way less misses over the course of this past year.
The Boss, on the other hand, is a mess.
So this is the big boss man from WWF.
Yeah.
He leaves. He realizes that his entire deal is a gimmick, and WWF owns it. So he's like, okay, I guess I'll just be the boss.
He's here for a couple months before the WWF threatens to sue them, and they change him to the Guardian Angel.
And we did
that show.
Yes, we did.
Like Nick Bockwinkel takes away his gimmick. He's like, give me the handcuffs and the nightstick and the gun.
The only time in wrestling history someone gets their gimmick confiscated by an authority figure. And then he becomes the Guardian Angel, who's just like a biker dude, which is bad too. These gimmicks just don't work. And like the person who he is, he's still a very good wrestler, very agile for his size, could potentially draw. He's just not going to draw as any of this.
Michael Buffer is here to do in-ring introductions. Rude poses and tries to intimidate Boss Man, and Boss Man just throws him back in the corner and screams in his face.
Yep, because Boss Man's a big motherfucker. That's not gonna work.
Jesse says it must be hard to psych out a guy who deals with criminals, but also that some people would say that Rick Rude is a criminal.
Who exactly would say that Rick Rude is a criminal? Exactly.
Isn't there a story that like Rick Rude would like bring his girlfriends to bars and like have dudes hit on them and then beat them up?
That sounds very accurate, and now that you mention it, yes, I do believe he does that. But is that a crime? Steve, is that a crime?
Rick Rude, the scariest man in the world.
Imagine you're at a bar, and you're
God.
hitting on this woman, and it's going well, and then you get a tap on your shoulder, and you turn around, and you're looking at not only a badass man who's going to beat the shit out of you right now, but also the most gorgeous man you've ever seen in your entire life. And you're like, oh.
Boss with an amazing backdrop that I swear sends Rude 15 feet in the air.
This is one of those moves that you feel like guys like go up for, and then halfway through they regret it. Like, oh, I shouldn't have agreed to this.
This was straight out of a video game.
Holy shit.
Rib breaker by the Boss. Boss Man slams Rude out to the floor. He hangs him upside down on the ropes, and then they do a spot where like Rude is hanging upside down, so he does a sit up and Boss Man punches him and he goes back down, and he does the sit up again and he gets punched back down. I loved this.
These aren't easy sit-ups, ladies and gentlemen.
God no.
No human being on the planet casually does sit-ups like this under duress.
You can even tell Rude is having some trouble with it.
This is an impossible thing to do.
I mean, this hasn't been the hardest match, but he's already been in there wrestling for a few minutes.
Like, my abs hurt watching him do this.
Rude comes off the top, gets punched in the jaw. Boss Man signals for the straddle, but Rude is able to move. Rude follows up with a sunset flip for the pin. Not a very good match. Shockingly short, only 8 minutes.
Probably better that they kept it short like that. There wasn't a lot here.
Didn't look like Boss Man had a lot of stamina at this point.
Boss Man's one of those guys that you can understand why, like, WCW talked themselves into getting him. Because, like, you know, he'd gotten a lot of TV time in WWF, and he's a big dude, and a lot of guys backstage like him. But, like, what do you do with a guy like that?
It's
like, what's the
especially
plan?
I mean, he had been a star, and he had been a star in WCW. It was Big Bubba.
Yeah.
Without the gimmick, it didn't work.
No. He was a gimmick. Like, it's like bringing in the Undertaker and like promoting him as Mark Calloway, and it's like, okay, but the gimmick is what was over. You understand that, right?
Next up, we've got a tag match for the WCW World Tag Titles. The Nasty Boys defend against Sting and Hawk. At some point, Sting has become embroiled in a feud with the Nasty Boys. And he has cycled through a few different challengers, or a few different tag team partners to challenge them. Him and Davey Boy Smith lost at the Clash of the Champions. Now he's brought in Hawk. I think Animal has gone into retirement and cashed in as Lloyds of London at this point.
Yeah, they broke up in WWF because of that, and because Hawk quit because they gave him Rocco the Puppet as their manager. And Animal wouldn't quit, and then he got hurt, and he cashed in as Lloyds of London. Yeah, so Hawk's on his own. Mostly he's in New Japan at this point.
Yeah.
Teaming with Kensuke Sasaki.
Yeah.
Why didn't they bring in that tag team here? They're called the Hellraisers. They were
badass.
They were arguably way better than the actual Road Warriors.
Missy Hyatt is managing the Nasty Boys wearing a see-through pink dress.
Yep. The best part about this is that Jesse Ventura turns directly to Tony Schiavone and was like, what do you think about that, Tony? Because everyone knows Tony Schiavone is a pervert.
Yeah.
Did he say at one point, too, like, did she get that from Lois?
God, I love Jesse. It's a shame. Will we ever do another Jesse Ventura show? Feels like we're running out of them.
Say, not unless we dig back here, and which I'm sure we will. We haven't covered all the stuff from this era yet, but we're running thin on Jesse. We've done most of it.
This is one fall, 30-minute time limit. You might say, no way is this going to approach that time limit. Unfortunately, you would be wrong.
Yeah, it would be great if it didn't. I mean, it would be awesome if it did not. But
this match goes forever.
Like infinity years. I need you to understand. A billion million years.
Like first 10 minutes are Sting and Hawk beating up the Nasty Boys, and then Hawk gets caught and his arm gets worked over for a while. He tags out to Sting, but the referee doesn't see it. Finally, he's able to tag to Sting. The announcer calls 15 minutes gone, 15 minutes left, and we go basically the whole 15. The Nasties go to walk out. Sting and Hawk run them down, drag them back to the ring. Sting goes for the splash from the top, but Knobbs gets his knees up. Shivani does a nice bit of commentary here, like Knobbs had moved himself to get into position for the splash. Shivani says he must have done it knowing he could get his knees up, and he wanted to hit Sting and bait him into doing the splash.
That is some good commentary. That's a good point.
Sags runs Sting into the railing. Missy slaps him, which wakes him up, but Sags comes in with a clothesline to cut him off. Sting gets his boots up on a corner charge, does a sunset flip. He tries to tag out, but Sags cuts him off. We've got 10 minutes to go. Pump handle slam by Sags. Nasties work on Sting's arms for the next 5 minutes. Knobbs comes off the top, but Sting gets his boots up. We got 5 minutes to go. Sags knocks Hawk off the apron to prevent a tag. Knobbs slams Sting. Hawk breaks up a splash attempt. Sting tags out to Hawk. We've got 3 minutes left in the match. Hawk comes in with a big shoulder block and a clothesline. Scoop slam. Sags breaks up the pin. Stinger splash on Knobbs. He goes for the Stinger. He goes for the Scorpion Deathlock. Missy gets up. She has a whip. She whips Sting.
Yep, she has a whip and she whips Sting.
Sting kisses her. Knobbs accidentally knocks her off the apron. Sting rolls him up for 2. Sting and Hawk hit the Doomsday Device. Missy comes in to weakly break up the pin, and that's a disqualification. Turns out Sags crushed his throat on that bump out of the ring, so he's got to go to the hospital after this. This wasn't a horrible match. It was just way too long. It lasted almost 30 minutes.
It lasted a billion years, and it felt like it lasted a billion years.
Easily they could have done this same match in 15 minutes.
The baffling thing is that if Sags hadn't hurt himself, it really makes me wonder if this match would have gone even longer.
It was a 30-minute time limits. They were coming to the end here.
Oh, thank fucking God. I don't understand the purpose of this. Of course Sting can go 30 with literally anyone in the entire world. And anytime he was in the ring, things got a little bit better. But it's the Nasty Boys.
30 Nasty Boys. WCW had this weird habit of doing. I feel like I've seen other shows where they put the Nasty Boys in there for ridiculously long matches.
It's clear to me that they thought the Nasty Boys could work, and they're
not terrible. I think they're underrated.
I agree.
Yeah, it's not like it's the Godwins. They were competent, but yeah, we don't need to see a 30-minute Nasty Boys match.
That's the thing, is that they're great brawlers, and that's great. There's definitely a place for that, but it's not wrestling 30-minute matches right before the main event.
Mean Gene shills for the hotline, and then it's main event time for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. We've got Vader defending against Ric Flair. This is the match the world has come to see. One fall, 45-minute time limit. Vader is out first, accompanied by Harley Race. Flair is out next to a huge pop. He has a beautiful purple robe on. Dark purple trunks, light purple boots. Looks amazing.
This is as clean and as awesome as he has looked literally since Starrcade 83, 10 years before.
He's grown his hair back out. His power has come back with it.
I feel like they really should have made more of the fact that this is the 10-year anniversary of that one.
Yeah.
Because that's important.
The crowd is just roaring for Flair on the introductions.
Oh man, the fact that it's in Charlotte is like the fact that it's in Charlotte makes it nuts that they didn't already plan on doing this. Like this is so obvious.
Crazy that it took like that insane Sid Arn Anderson incident to get to this.
Because this is perfect.
Yeah.
Like the fans are hungry for Flair to win this.
Shivani brings up that doctors told Flair he'd never wrestle again after the plane crash. Jesse responds, the plane crash may have been easy compared to this.
That is a great line. That is a great line.
Deafening chants for Flair. I have seriously never heard a crowd like this.
Especially at this point, especially in WCW, where mostly the fans just sit on their goddamn hands the whole time.
Oh, they are rocking here. I mean, I guess, and the context to add here. To this point, North Carolina does not have professional sports teams. There is no Carolina Panthers. There is no Carolina Hurricanes. Like, Ric Flair is their professional sports team. Like, Ric Flair and Michael Jordan are the two most famous athletes to come from North Carolina.
And this might be the last time.
Yeah. They could be seeing Flair's retirement. I mean, there is no guarantee that Flair wins here.
No. In fact, it's long-term booking-wise, it's stupid to have Flair win here.
You would think you would just put Vader over and then have a young. The problem is they don't really have a better younger baby face that they're going to put over to have beat Vader. But yeah, you would not, think to have 43-year-old Ric Flair be the guy to slay the dragon.
Yeah, in fact, if you're trying to put over Vader as the man, like this unbeatable monster, having him retire Flair is the biggest notch you can put on his belt.
Yeah.
Like, that's the beating Undertaker at WrestleMania of WCW. Like, you put out Flair at Starrcade. You're the man. I think only one guy has beaten Flair at Starrcade that I can think of.
Only Sting did it twice.
It was Sting, yeah.
I don't actually remember. There was some goofiness in that 89 turn. I don't think he lost any of the other matches in 89. I think he drew against Luger. He beat Muda. He drew Luger. He lost to Sting, if I'm remembering right.
But notably, like, no one's ever beaten him in a high-profile main event at Starrcade except for Sting. And for a good reason.
They lock up. Vader keeps throwing Flair down. Flair fires up with chops. Vader just throws him off. Shivani rattles off Flair's history at Starrcade. Won the title in 83, retained it in 84, 85, and 86. Won the title in 87, retained the title in 88. Jumps over the Black Scorpion for good reason.
Probably smart.
They go to the floor. Vader picks Flair up and drops him across the railing, and Flair is fucked.
I want to point this out because I feel like it's important. Because we bury Vader hard. Not just us, but everybody. That he's like a stiff, careless worker who hurts people and doesn't give a shit. Vader is working his ass off in this match to not hurt Flair.
Yeah. If you haven't seen this match, if you don't understand what the hype is about Vader, you get this and that Sting match from the last Starrcade are, I'd say, they're the two best Vader matches I've seen. I haven't seen that much of his Japan stuff.
You can see in his eyes that he's locked in. He wants to do a good job. He understands the importance of the moment, and he understands that the important person here is not him. You don't see a lot of that in Vader over the years, but you damn sure do here.
Vader goes for a charge. He misses and hits the railing. Awesome flurry from Flair. The most fire I've ever seen from him.
These flurries, he does a couple of them during the course of the match where, like, he just beats Vader with such a fury.
Furious.
He just, knocks Vader down to a knee. Vader doesn't go down. He never goes down to these flurries. But it's just like he's just wearing Vader down just with the ferocity of his assault. It's amazing.
I don't know if these are just great worked punches or if he's just throwing live rounds here.
Well, the best part is I was looking closely at the punches because at least at various points they put the camera like right up in Vader's face so you can see that those punches are landing.
I love how they shot this match.
Yeah. But like I saw at least 3 of the chops hit Vader square in the face.
Yeah.
Like, he just chopping him in the nose.
Well, here's the thing. Vader would dish it out, but he'd take it too.
Yeah. Oh, that's what Vader wanted. That's how you'd get Vader locked in on a match. It's like he wanted that because that gave him permission to do it too.
He runs Vader into the post, but Harley cuts him off. Vader proceeds to just pummel Flair, busts him open with a punch, like clearly busts up his nose and his lip and his tongue.
He's like, yeah, hit me with those live rounds, Flair. Give it. And here comes mine.
Yeah.
Though I'm sure Flair asked him to do that too, because Flair wanted to like hard way here.
Yeah.
Like the beating when Vader is on offense, the beating he gives Flair seems inhumane even. Like
watching this, I'm like worried for Flair, knowing everything turns out fine, but yeah, just watching the guy get beat up, and he sells it incredibly well. Like, what I loved about Flair is like Flair would get slammed, and he would just scream. He's like, "Oh God!"
Yeah, he would find where like the microphones were, because that's the way that, if you don't know this about wrestling, they have microphones under the ring and attached to the cameraman, so that they can pick up like various things in the ring. Like, so if you're like calling the match to the other guy, you go away from where that is, and if you want something to be heard, you get closer to the cameraman so the fans at home can hear it. That's how wrestling works. If I just explained it to you, I'm happy to have done so. Flair always knows exactly where the microphone is when he screams. He screams directly into the cameraman's face. Oh God!
Vader hits Flair with a disgusting superplex.
Like,
oh.
It's one of those ones where you just start laughing because you're like, that's so mean.
God, and watching Flair take those bumps on his side. Flair comes off the ropes, but Vader goes up for a splash. Flair rolls out of the way. Flair comes off the ropes, and Vader just decks him with a body avalanche.
Yeah, he does.
Vader throws Flair to the floor. Harley gets some licks in. Vader misses a charge into the corner, but then he reverses a whip from Flair and squashes Flair in the corner. Flair fires up, rights and lefts. Vader goes down to a knee, and he drops him with a huge right hand. He's finally taken him down. He wraps Vader's leg around the ring post. 15 minutes gone, 30 minutes left. Love this little bit here. You hear Shivani tell Jesse to stand up.
Yep.
Like, I don't know if that's like an old school tradition for a world title match, but it should be if it isn't.
I love that idea. Yeah. Like, get on your fucking feet. That's just how we do this.
This matters. Like, we're coming down the stretch now. Flair smashes Vader's knee with a chair, throwing just furious fists. I think Flair is incredibly underrated as a brawler.
It's weird that he doesn't get more of an opportunity to do stuff like this during the course of his career, because like the fighting spirit involved in this, and just like him throwing fists and chops with fury, like I wish I'd seen way more of this Flair.
Those Terry Funk matches were some epic brawls, but you're right, he didn't get to do that many of them.
Yeah, like he had this in his arsenal 100%. A big bloody brawl is kind of what Flair wanted to do. But he kind of got pigeonholed into this. I have to be like
the technician, the worker, the chicken
wrestler,
heel, yeah.
Babyface Flair was a brawler, a blood and guts brawler. Why? I wish we had seen more babyface Flair.
He hits Vader in the head with the chair, drops him with a big right hand. Flair bites Vader. He is just a madman at this point.
I just never seen him like that. I can't put that over enough. Like, it's coming from a place that I didn't know he had.
A different Ric Flair.
It's to the point where, like, this isn't just a good acting performance. It's not just a good match. Like, there's something real that he's tapping into here. Like, this is literally like fighting against the dying of the light.
Yeah. Shivani said Flair collapses from exhaustion at this point. Both men are down. Shivani says he's seen Flair go 60 minutes many times, but 20 minutes with Vader is like 60 minutes with most guys.
best piece of commentary on this entire show.
Gotta put Shivani over. This was one of the best performances of his career.
Like, he's in. Like, he's locked in. Like, this is the day he became a man.
He was so good, I didn't really miss Jim Ross as much as JR would have absolutely killed this.
This almost feels more perfect, too. Like, JR, like, Tony grew up with Ric Flair.
Shivani has a very personal relationship with Ric Flair.
He was there in the locker room at Starrcade 1 interviewing Flair when he won that first NWA title. Like, he's here now watching maybe the end of the he idolizes. It's beautiful.
Flair works the leg some more. He struts. He goes for the figure four, but Vader blocks it. The mastodon is just too big. I love it. Wrap those tree trunk legs.
I love at this point that, like, Vader is selling the shit out of the idea that, like, he's not used to having an injury. Like, he's not used to being tired.
No.
But he's still so violent that, like, Flair's getting more and more offense in as the match goes on, but it's just not doing much.
Vader slams Flair. He goes up to the second rope for the Vader bomb, but Flair rolls out of the way. Flair immediately locks on the figure four. They are standing in Charlotte.
It's always been fascinating to me, too, that Ric Flair basically has no offensive moves. Like, his moveset is like
chops, knee drop.
Like, it's amazing that he went so far in his career. He never really had... And that's what makes this match so compelling, too, is like, how the fuck is he supposed to beat Vader when he has
Even if
no
he had
moves?
moves, he couldn't do any of them to Vader. What, is he going to fucking suplex Vader?
Yeah, it's like, so your only offensive move is the figure four against a man who's 400 pounds? Like, do you think that's a good idea? Okay. It really puts him at, like, such a deficit before the match ever starts. There's no RKO here to bail him out.
Vader drags himself to the ropes. He pulls himself to his feet. He clotheslines Flair. Drops a huge elbow, which is the simplest move, but when Vader does it, it looks devastating.
Yup.
Vader goes all the way up to the top. He goes for the moonsault. This is the kill shot. Like, they're literally going to have to scrape Flair off the mat if he hits this.
I always loved that Vader did that. That he has, like, two versions of the same move. Like, the Vader bomb, which will kill you. And the moonsault, which is, like, double the Vader bomb.
He only broke this out on pay-per-view, thankfully. He was not doing this every night.
Say, in Japan, mostly in WCW, he didn't usually hit this. In Japan, he was hitting this. And he never worked this one time in his whole career.
I'm trying to think. In WCW, the only guy I remember him hitting on was Big Boss Man. I think nobody else was going to take this.
In New Japan, he and Bam Bam Bigelow used to do, like, double moonsaults to people.
Jesus Christ.
It was just
Bigelow actually worked his is the thing, right?
Yeah, he'd do his, like, 3/4, so he'd go, like, kind of diagonal so he could see where he was going. Vader's just like, here comes my ass. Let's go.
He comes down on the moonsault. Flair rolls out of the way. Flair rolls over, crawls over. He covers. He gets 1, 2. Harley Race has climbed up on the top rope in his suit and tie and his loafers, like 55-year-old Harley Race. Comes off the top rope for a diving headbutt. Flair sees it out of the corner of his eye and rolls out of the way, so Harley hits Vader with the headbutt instead.
Let me also say, too, we've been talking about, like, stiff shots. Harley Race is an old man. He can work the shit out of this, but he doesn't. He gives Vader a flying headbutt.
Oh, my God.
Like, you didn't need to do this, Harley.
The ref literally throws Harley out of the ring.
Just shoves him ass first out of the ring.
Harley goes ass over tea kettle over the top rope onto the ramp.
Love it.
Flair fires up. Vader cuts him off. Flair comes off the rope. He clips Vader's knee. Manages to get him over in a schoolboy for the 1, 2, 3. Incredible match. Like, just an absolute classic. It's like a Rocky movie come to life.
The crowd explodes
Oh,
in such a way that, like, in my memory, there are like fireworks going off in the background. Like, they are so happy. This is just such a pure, beautiful moment. You don't get these in WCW. Like, this is
no.
maybe the one
This
pure
is the
thing.
Heat territory.
Yeah. But, like, especially, like, think all through, like, the Attitude Era and everything. Can you remember a big, huge pay-per-view where everything went great and you got the ending you wanted and
This
everything
is
was
what
okay?
Starrcade with Sting should have been, but they fucked it up.
Yeah. They never get it right. They never get it right.
It's like
But
the one time they nailed it.
this one time when this wasn't even what they wanted to do,
No.
they actually pull it off.
Now, the other one I could think of was when Luger beat Hogan, but that was just on a random Nitro.
Yeah. Again, just like random shit they throw in. But whenever they plan stuff, it always went awry. But somehow they nailed it here. Could not have been better.
Yeah, crowd is absolutely crazy. They're just going wild. Flair doesn't celebrate much. He just kind of puts the belt on and gets out of there, heads to the top of the ramp, turns around to pose for the crowd for a second, and then heads backstage. They do drop confetti. Jesse and Tony talk for a second, and then we go back to Vader's locker room. Bischoff tries to get a word in, but Vader is just going crazy and smashing everything. Nice little detail that they've got like the plastic set up for a champagne celebration that we know isn't happening.
I was wondering why there was plastic everywhere because I did not understand that that's what it was for. I was like, what the fuck is going on with that?
Yeah.
My favorite thing is like Vader grabs this whole like row of
Jesus.
lockers,
Yeah.
pulls it down by accident, grabs it, and then just starts uppercutting it.
Yeah. Bischoff hauls ass out of there.
Like, we don't even see Bischoff on television. Like, he starts to do his interview and then runs.
Flair comes out to do a curtain call. Nice moment. No one has left the arena.
Oh, yeah. God, this is such a great moment.
This feels like one where the fans probably stuck around for like an hour just like cheering and chanting.
Like, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Like, this isn't just something special and something great. It's like the end of an era. And, like, especially WCW back in those days, every time you go to a show like this in Charlotte, you're probably seeing guys you went to wrestling shows with in, like, 1985. Yeah. Just like, oh, hey, it's Bob.
Down to just the diehards now. Like,
yeah.
These are the fans who have stuck with this promotion through hard times, stuck with this promotion while Flair was gone, and now he's come home, and their hero is delivered.
And they gave him what they wanted. Finally.
Sometimes people need to have their faith rewarded.
Like, running a Heat territory is great if you can pull it off, but every once in a while...
You gotta give people that catharsis that'll keep them coming back.
Exactly right.
I mean, there are not very many perfect moments in wrestling, but I feel like this is one of them.
This is one. This match should not have been this good, guys. It shouldn't have been. Vader should have been lazy. Flair should have been old. The crowd should have been dead. The lead up to it should have been ruined by a bunch of shenanigans on WCW's part. But they fucking nailed it. Just this one big, beautiful time they did it.
Yeah. The stars aligned on this night. All the things that had to go right here, and they did.
Can't give them enough credit.
Gene interviews Flair and his family. A humble Flair has tears in his eyes. He says Vader was a great champion. He says this is a little hard for him because it's the first time his family has ever been on TV with him. And Ricky Steamboat shows up to shake Flair's hand and congratulate him, and maybe spends just an extra second looking at that title.
And now that it's not on Vader, that title seems a lot more attainable.
Yeah. And those two, we'll have a great match at Spring Stampede that we covered last spring.
Also, Flair's family is in the locker room too, looking like they don't give a shit about what just happened.
They all are very deer in the headlights being on TV.
Yeah, they are.
So, yeah, you've got Reed, you've got David, you've got Ashley, Charlotte. Who is the older one? Is that Megan?
I think it
How
is
many kids
Megan.
does he
Yeah,
have?
I
Yeah.
think it's just the four, or at least the four
Yeah.
proper ones. But Megan's the one who never wanted to be on TV or anything. So I
Yeah.
think this is like literally her only ever performance on television.
Yeah. She's like the one of the kids who was just not into wrestling at all.
Can't blame her. She saw what it did.
Probably the smart one.
Yeah.
Gene wraps it up and we roll credits. Yeah, can't put the main event over enough. I mean, the rest of the card that led to it was not good, but no one on the ride home was complaining that the undercard wasn't good. If they
Yes.
were, they're a miserable prick of a fan, and they should give up on wrestling because it's not for them.
I mean, there probably were some of those, but fuck them. Who cares?
Yeah.
Now on to next year. No, luckily we're not doing next year this time, where
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan faces the fucking Butcher.
The booty, 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 man.
We go from this to Hulk Hogan versus the guy who carries his weed in the main event of next year's Starrcade.
Yeah, I mean, this just feels like a really important show for WCW because for the first time in so many years, for the first time really since Turner bought this company, there's hope.
I almost feel like this. I know this is my headcanon. Like, I know that I do this a lot to try to connect dots, but like, I almost wonder if like Hogan sees this match and he's just like, oh, it's a pretty fucking good match, brother. Like, maybe maybe this company is something after all.
If Flair doesn't go to WCW, Hogan wouldn't have come.
Oh,
Like
he wouldn't.
Flair was instrumental in getting Hogan to come because despite you would think there would be this rivalry between them, they were cool, they were friends, they'd become friends working together in the WWF, and Flair was always calling him saying, hey, you should come over here, like things are turning around.
Yeah, and it's not just that like they were friends, but like that must have felt like something unfinished for Hogan, like that dream match that never quite got off the ground.
We didn't get to do the big match.
Like, even if I just come just for the one thing, like, god damn it, we could draw that money we never drew.
It would be a good way to wrap his career up.
Yep.
Oh, so yeah, good note to end this year's Starrcade anthology on. I mean, we have covered all the weirdness of early 90s WCW with the bizarre tournaments, the Battle Bowl, the Black Scorpion, all leading to this one moment.
Now, if you've recalled from past times that we've done things like this, usually whenever we do a long, prolonged thing in WCW way back in the day, Steve has to give me something to keep me invested in this shit, because my God, that's a lot of old WCW. So what are we doing next week, Steve?
Next week, we open the forbidden door. We go somewhere we've never gone before, to the land of the rising sun.
New Japan!
New Japan Pro Wrestling presents Wrestle Kingdom 9. The show that changed the game.
The very first one ever aired on American pay-per-view. The very first one that the majority of people ever saw.
First New Japan show I ever watched.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about, from the Ghost promotion, GFW.
Yeah, the fact that Jeff Jarrett is somehow in the middle of all this.
Yeah, to Bullet Club literally conquering the entire wrestling world all at once.
Yeah. This is the show that I think put New Japan on the map in the mind of a lot of American fans. A coming out party, the triumph for them after years and years of rebuilding and wretchedness. It was clear that this promotion was really going places.
Yeah. To be honest, this is probably going to be a pretty long one, because we never even covered this promotion before.
Yeah.
There's a lot to get to.
We did that one show where we did like the very broad strokes history of New Japan. But this is one where it feels like the backstory is like the entire promotion instead of just like what happened the month before this.
So we're not going to try to package that all into one show, but I do definitely recommend that you go listen to our old New Japan show, which covered basically the entire history up to this pay-per-view. So please do that. Just get some backstory, and we'll do our best also next week.
Yes. So probably appropriate that this drops on Christmas Day. A Christmas gift from us to you here at the Lawcast. Hope you are celebrating safely this holiday season. We'll be back at you next week on January 1st in the year 2021. with Wrestle Kingdom 9. All that and more next time on the Lawcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again next year.